Let's take a little time to reveal the prehistoric stories that the earth once concealed. Mix them all together on this ancient land. It's time to spread some Palaeo Jam. Hello, welcome to the latest edition of Palaeo Jam. I am your host, Michael Mills, and today we are talking about a few things, including paleo podcasting, because my special guest today has her own podcast, Pals in Paleo. Adele Pentland, welcome to Palaeo Jam, fellow podcaster.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's it's like what do we talk about? Like it's like, oh, mine's really good and yours is really good, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Because I reckon what I want to talk about first is we couldn't do this yesterday because you were out shearing, because you live 100 kilometres away from the nearest town. Is that right?
Yeah, 110, 130, depending on how you want to slice it. So
just down there.
Just down the road. I live and work on the traditional lands of the Koa people, so I just like to pay acknowledgement, say my acknowledgement to elders past, present and emerging, and to country. And yeah, Central Western Queensland, dinosaur capital of Australia. Woo! Get around it.
Get around it, yes. And I'm here on Kaurna country, so likewise acknowledge the stories of this place. You know, one of the things I love about Australia is that we're a place where stories have been told for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, we're all just stories.
Finding ways to make connections with that. Yeah, absolutely. We're all stories in the end. Just make it a good one.
Yeah.
Doctor Who said that.
Yes.
I had a T-shirt with that on it. Anyway, we're just going to fanboy and girl all these things throughout the next 30 minutes. So you're a vertebrate paleontologist, an expert in Australian pterosaurs.
That's what they call me.
And there aren't very many of either of those, are there? There aren't very many Australian pterosaurs that we found, because that's always the proviso, isn't it? It's like we can only make judgments on the basis of the fossils that we found. So tell us a little bit about what we know about Australian pterosaurs, and that'll probably take us to the end of the podcast.
Yeah, great. So they're as rare as hen's teeth. The first pterosaurs from Australia were published in 1980, whereas the first pterosaurs known worldwide were published in like the 18th century. So we have so much catching up to do. Before I started my PhD, fewer than 20 pterosaur bones and like partial bones had been found. And yeah, what I've sort of been working on is trying to name and describe some new stuff. So I named a new species of pterosaur in 2019. Can you even call it new if it's been 5 years? Anyway, that's more rhetorical. Ferrodraco lentoni. And it's a 10% skeleton with 30 bones. And yeah, there's some new cool stuff coming out very soon. So I'm still chipping away at it.
Still chipping away. Okay, so Ferrodraco, 4 metre wingspan.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep, that's my boy. That's my son.
It's not small, is it?
No,
I mean,
no.
It's not quite Quetzalcoatlus, but it's bigger than any flying thing that's alive now.
Yeah. No, I'm very glad that I don't have to try and look after my sheep and lambs with, 4 metre demons just flying about. And they've got these, big heads with big jaws full of spike-shaped teeth. Yeah, pretty deadly.
And one of the things you note in the research, I think, about it is that they're quite similar, surprisingly so, to some that have been found in England. So what does that tell us?
Yeah, so that was sort of the first results from the first phylogenetic analysis, the first family tree that I put together in 2019. And then over the years, I've done updated ones because originally I was thinking, looking at the dinosaurs and the other vertebrates that we had, it's like, okay, I expected our Australian stuff to be really close to stuff from South America because back in the day, Australia was part of this massive supercontinent called Gondwana, the southern supercontinent, made up of South America, Africa, India, Madagascar, Australia, New Zealand, Antarctica, New Caledonia. Really sorry to anyone who missed out in that list. But yeah, massive area. And yeah, what it kind of showed was pterosaurs just don't really seem to care. They can fly and had this cosmopolitan distribution. But since that initial phylogenetic analysis from 2019, I'm starting to see more things maybe tying in with the South American stuff, but it's a little bit difficult sometimes. One fossil can completely change our understanding of things as well. So the more new stuff that we have, the better idea that we have. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You can't, well, it's a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box to follow. So you just kind of, like hands in the dark, trying to feel around, work out what's happening.
It's like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle. You're right. It's like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle in the dark without the picture of the cover on the front, and it's a 2,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, and you've got 3 of the pieces, and you've got to try and describe what the picture is on the front. I mean, that's
and that jigsaw puzzle came from the op shop, so there's always some pieces missing. We will never have the full picture. There's probably species that just never fossilized.
Yeah, and there's probably pieces from other jigsaw puzzles in that jigsaw puzzle box from the op shop.
Yeah. Just
you know what I mean? And it's really when you've been on paleo digs and you start playing with that analogy, and it's an analogy I use, the jigsaw puzzle.
I have a great story. One of the early digs in Winton.
Suddenly go, wow.
They dug up a sauropod and there was a wombat next to it. And just, 100 million year old dinosaur next to a wombat that didn't go extinct 100 million years ago. It was much more recent. That really tested them. Wally the wombat.
Yes. Because it's that thing of when did that happen and when did that happen, and the wombats clearly died, but in the place where this other thing had died and stuff. Yeah. And I've spent some time at South Walker Creek. Mm-hmm. In up near Mackay, and it's this place where you imagine a creek bed, where the water's running and animals are dying and the bones are scattered all over the place. The other thing is, when you think about roadkill, when something dies on the side of the road and you see it for the first time that morning, the whole thing's there. But over a period of time, it gets mushed and thrown all over the place, and then other things might die in a similar spot and stuff.
Yeah.
So jigsaw puzzles, and you're right. That idea of that most, and I think when we look at the fact that there are currently 11,000 species of birds, and we've only named 1,400 dinosaurs across the Mesozoic, like there's thousands more that we will probably never know about. So pterosaurs, Australian pterosaurs. What was it that drew you to them? These big flying, was it these big giant flying reptiles? Is it what?
I would love to tell you that I was a dinosaur kid and that pterosaurs were my favorite, but that's not the case. No, I did my honours at Monash University. I finished and I got half a mark off first class honours, and no one would take me on as a student. And then as I send more emails out and people tell you that you're not good enough, it really knocks your self-esteem. So I was like, okay, I need to do something. I finished, I've got to go out into the real world now. So I decided at the start of 2016, I'll move up to Winton to work as a tour guide at Australian Age of Dinosaurs for an 8-month contract. And I never left. And it's through that experience that I met.
The rest is history.
And that, so on one of the digs done by Age of Dinosaurs, I met Dr. Steve Porapat, who's my mentor supervisor. I'm lucky to call him my friend. And then I was packing the fridge because I worked in the cafe a little bit too. And Pat and Professor Pat Rich and her husband, Dr. Tom Rich, came up as well. And Pat said to me as I'm putting Gatorades in this fridge, "Oh, Adele, Steve and I are looking for postgrad students. We think you'd be an excellent candidate." And the email that I sent afterwards is so embarrassing because I was just so wounded and beat up by the world. I was just like, I think I might have misheard you, but is there a chance that you said these really nice things? And because at that point I was just, my confidence was so shot. But yeah, Pat and Steve, have just backed me and believed in me. And then we were going to work on plants and insects from the Winton Formation, because that's what I felt more comfortable with. And then one of the graziers, Bob Elliott, whose parents started Australian Age of Dinosaurs, he found the most complete pterosaur in all of Australia in April 2017, just spraying weeds in the creek. And I got first dibs to work on it. And initially I was like, I've never worked on vertebrates. Like, I don't know if I can do it. And my now husband said, you can say no, but you're an idiot if you do. I'm like, gosh, I hate it when you're right. So that's how I fell into pterosaurs, completely by accident. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I have great people that have backed me. Fluke. Complete fluke.
Sometimes fluke, but it is that thing of clearly Pat recognised something. Pat Rich recognised something in seeing you and during that time.
Yeah,
and
I brought my thesis to the dig and showed it to Steve, and he was like, "I can't believe you didn't get first class honours." So again, like, it was marked by 2 or 3 people.
So there. Yeah, and there are. So I work with a lot of young performers, and one of the things that I talk to them about is there are people that get what you do, and there are people that don't.
Yeah, and I suppose
the people that don't get what you do don't matter, because they're not there for the journey. The people that do get it go with you, walk with you.
And I suppose like that sliding doors moment as well, like you would probably see this in sort of like the performing arts space, is that I got told no a bunch of times. I could have just gotten to the point where where I said to myself, I'm okay here. You know what? Like, this isn't for me. This is too hard. But yeah, paleontology just means so much to me that I wanted to push. And yeah, I'm just really fortunate that with the podcast as well, like that's one reason why I like to ask people how they got to what they did. Because it is sometimes easy to feel like, oh, everyone's just, so smart, so super intelligent, like they've always wanted to do this. And it's just nice to sort of peel back and see like what other interests people have, because, scientists and paleontologists were people, like we like Doctor Who and things like that. And there's not just one path into paleontology.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. People often say to me, "Well, did you study paleontology? No. Did you study science? No. Did you study Michael? Did you study theatre and performing? No. I just."
What did you study then?
A series of accidental encounters led me to this, but partly returning to the thing always that I've loved doing, which is writing songs.
Yeah.
And writing songs. I grew up watching The Jungle Book and Disney and Mary Poppins and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was reading. I did a radio show for kids because I walked into a radio station one day and said, "Hey, I want to do a radio show for kids," and they went, "All right then." And I walked out going, "I have no idea what I'm doing. How do I do that?" So I did this thing, and that gave me connections to places like the museum and the Botanic Gardens here in Adelaide. And then, anyway, I ended up being their arts coordinator for a while. None of this was planned, and I thought, oh, I should write more songs and do things. And anyway, one day I hadn't been to the radio station for a while, and I walked in, and they said, "Do you want to interview David Bellamy, the English naturalist?" The guy, "Oh, God, on, he's passed away now. He's great big. He was around. Him and Attenborough kind of would butt heads from time to time, but." Bellamy said, "I've been reading this amazing book, Future Eaters by Tim Flannery," and it had only just come out. He'd read it 5 times, and I'd never read it. And I read the book, and I've gone, "Oh my goodness!" It was my first exposure to Australian megafauna, and anything Australian prehistoric. And then a show came out of that, and Prof. Flint, the character, was born of that. And then Tim came and worked at the museum and ran the museum. So I went from lining up getting his autograph in my copy of Future Eaters to sitting in his office drinking wine and going on museum roadshows. Paleontologists from all around the world, like Scotty Hocknell from Queensland, like Phil Curry, like John, all of these people, I would be going out to dinner with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these people. And I'm sitting in the room going, how did I get here? But for me, it was really important to learn that the science, you can create good art, whether it's music or theatre or whatever it is, you can create good art and still get the science right. And that's always been a driving part of the process and stuff. So
I think what
hey,
you
this is
said
not
is just
you
so
interviewing me, is
important.
it? Well, but
Just
yeah,
in terms
and it was
they go hand in hand. Like, you can't just put the paper out and be like, oh, well, good science will spread itself. No, you need to have beautiful paleo art, these reconstructions that really like bring the bones to life and convey what this thing was.
yeah. The Neil Gaiman has a quote where he says, "The universe is not made of atoms; it's made of stories."
Yeah.
The Doctor Who quote, "We're all stories in the end. Just make yours a good one." At the bottom of my email, I think I have a phrase that I made up, and it's basically, but it's it's not an original idea, but it's just that we do not engage with facts or data; we engage with stories.
No, and we saw that with vaccinations as well.
Songs and with vaccines, we saw it. That's how Trump got elected the first time. All of those things. Back to you though.
Get away from Trump.
Back to how did Trump get into this? Okay. So you've one of the interesting things I think in doing the social media stalking of you that one does in these things to prepare for
what did you
asking.
find?
What did I find? Oh, look, I should have phoned Steve Poropat and asked for some dirt, but or some other of my paleo buddies, but no, I didn't. I'm just really interested in this idea of being a role model and the stuff that you do in STEM because you do demonstrate what's possible. And the reason I ask this is because scattered around my office are all manner of Mary Anning things. We did a show at the Fringe last year about Mary Anning. I have a Professor Flint album with Gemma Dandy, a performer I work with. Mary Anning was always Professor Flint's science hero.
Yeah.
And I always find it fascinating when I talk to groups and say, okay, who can give me the name of a famous scientist? And always Albert Einstein first. And sometimes I was with a group at a school, and after 6 or 7 minutes of them giving me names, and they were all men, I said to them, so does anybody see the pattern here? And they're like, oh, they're all Australian. No, they're all dead. They're all this, they're all that. And it took many, many hints for them to go, oh. I'm like, yeah. So my science hero is Mary Anning. And they're like, what? Shouldn't be a surprise. So where do you see your role now that you've been able to, I guess, take a few steps in this place, as Mary did, to say this is possible?
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned before that I worked at Australian Dinosaurs. I was in the cafe, but I was also a tour guide. So I was sort of in front and center doing science communication on the front lines. But yeah, I've sort of been contacted over the years, and I know there's like one girl that wants to be a paleontologist, and her mum's messaged me and said, oh, like she's got a photo of you up on like her inspiration wall of like kick-ass women. And I got a really lovely email start of this year saying that someone, Violet, I think her name was, she decided to draw me as the subject for her Young Archibald Prize. So Young Archies, it's a portrait competition for kids. And it's just wild to think that I do have, these eyes on me that look up to me as a woman who's in paleontology doing science and stuff. And I should also add, like, I'm also not fully white either. I'm biracial. So I think maybe some of that plays into it too. But when you have those messages like that, you have to take yourself more seriously. Like, that's a really good reason why I try not to have profanity on the podcast. And if my guests want to swear, like, that's fine. I'll just let people know that it's coming. But, when kids look up to you and they're asking you for advice too, you have to sort of hold yourself like a little bit better and stand up straighter. And for me, it's not so much I'm doing it for myself as well. It's like, oh, well, I'm doing it for them too. And maybe that sounds a bit lofty and weird, but anyway, that's just how it feels for me. That's my experience.
Yeah, and I don't think it's lofty at all. I think it's remarkably humbling.
It's really humbling.
And I, I get that stuff as the prof and stuff, but my favourite feedback comes when it's a parent that sends me, and there's a young girl, 5-6-year-old girl in Sydney, who listens to the song "My Dog Trey" from the Mary Anning album, which is just this. It's a piano backing, and it's Gemma singing as Mary about her dog. And this is the song the girl listens to every night before she goes to sleep, and it's because she idolizes Mary Anning, and she's come to idolize Gemma as representing that. And it's that stuff that I mean, there are moments when you see things like that and you tear up. Gemma and I did a gig in Victoria Square a couple of years ago at Christmas. There were like 2,500 people there because it was part of this big Christmas thing, and we did some songs from the album. And a friend of mine sent me this photo, and there was this little girl. She was 3 years old, and it was again to the My Dog Trey song, this beautiful ballad. And this little 3-year-old, she's in full ballet pose, and she's kind of doing the whole ballet, and she's so fixated on it. It's things like that.
Yeah.
That just make you go, oh my goodness. You're right, you do have that level of responsibility, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
try not to let them down. Try not to muck it up.
You do a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this fancy microphone in front of me.
Try not to do anything stupid on social media, and people go, look what you said and did. Oh my goodness, you're unfit, or whatever it is. It's like, because you can't make mistakes anymore, apparently.
I make mistakes all the time. I definitely make mistakes all the time.
Same. So tell us about what made you go, I want to do a paleontology podcast.
It is in part because I wanted to do more science communication, but I also didn't want to keep driving hundreds of kilometers to go to schools. And I just kind of figured, well, actually, I'd had the idea to do a podcast like years ago, didn't step up to the plate. And then, it just became more and more apparent to me that I should do it, especially when I got to go to a general science conference called Science Meets Parliament on a scholarship. I was really lucky. And I met with a professor in another discipline in science, and they're like, oh, we have dinosaurs in Australia? And I was like, like, I didn't scream, but I just screamed on the inside.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
I just screamed outside. Scream on the outside.
And I was just like, there is actually no point in me trying to work with these regional museums, get fossils on display, do all this stuff, unless it's like getting out into the public a little bit more. So I just wanted to do it my way and do my bit. And it's been really awesome. It's given me like a great chance to talk to people like yourself, other people who work in paleontology, not just academics as well, because I'm getting more and more interested in, but what other jobs are there, like fossil preparators, paleo artists, like how far can we push this, and how can we reshape what it means to work in this space? Because I don't know if you've noticed, but the academic system's a bit of a mess, and I don't think it's going to get any better. So we just have to take hold of the steering wheel, and we have to correct the ship ourselves.
Yeah, and create your own, like my job was made up.
Yeah,
it was made up because nobody was there. There was no singing paleontologists. There was no, and you're right though. The opportunity to so when I was thinking about Palaeo Jam and what I wanted it to be, one option was like, oh, should I be Professor Flint? And in the end, I've gone, no, I want to be Michael, because there's more flexibility and it's a different age group. But also, I just want to talk to my paleo mates.
Yeah. How good is it?
Just talk about the interesting things that they do and have it very, very conversational, which is why, for those that are listening for the first time, we record this effectively live. So I set the timer at the beginning. Adele looked with great horror at the fact that there's a timer. And then just like at the Academy Awards, at the 29.5-minute mark, the out music will start playing. But I love that because it gives it this rawness. We've got about 4.5 minutes left.
Thank you for this feels like a conference almost, like getting the warning.
Yeah, it is. Well, sort of. So I've told you who my science hero was.
Yeah.
And not just, it wasn't just an artificial construct for Prof. Flint. It made sense for him. But the more I've learned about Mary's story, it has become such a thing for me in terms of
she had to go through so much.
Partly,
she had to try and collect fossils to feed her family. She then had to deal with all the bigots who were like, "No, you can't be part of this. This is a boys' club. You know, you're not smart enough. You don't look like us." And then, like, she made it work, but there was a cost there too. Yeah,
what I always find really interesting with Mary's story is there's people often say you can't be what you can't see. Well, she had no one to see.
Yeah, that's
in a
true.
Sense.
Yeah,
and I think we need to be really careful when we say to people, you can't be what you can't see. Well, you can. You find your own, as she did. So, who's your science hero other than Professor Flint?
Geez, I've never really been one to like have heroes and stuff. Like everyone knows that.
Or somebody that you find inspiration from.
Yeah. I feel like the answer I should give is my supervisor, Steve Porpat. But I'm going to betray him and his trust, and I'm going to actually name his office mate and another supervisor of mine, Dr. Chris Mays. So Dr. Chris Maisie is the reason why I wanted to do paleontology in the first place. He is a paleobotanist and palaeontologist, so he works on fossil plants and spore and pollen grains. He just really tries to read the rocks, like take in the geology, and he really tries to think about the bigger picture of his science. And yeah, he was just so passionate. And on like a Friday afternoon, sometimes when the paleo unit was on at Monash back in the day, he would have screenings of, paleo related things too, and just make himself available if we wanted to ask him questions. Like, yeah, I owe him heaps. I would not have survived honours without him.
Yeah. So was there a moment when you've gone, shivers, I'm a paleontologist? Or was there a light bulb moment? Or was it this gradual thing?
It was not a gradual thing.
Back? Because that's...
No, it was when Ferrodraco got announced. And then all the news people want to put a label on you too. And they were just like, can we call you a paleontologist? I'm like, I guess so. I've named a new species. Sure, this is as good a time as any.
So what's that moment like? And we've got about a minute to go. That moment when that goes out into the ether, and you got, it was one of the top 100 downloaded papers.
Yeah, for scientific
in a year when 20,000
reports.
Papers are
just
published.
For scientific reports. Yeah.
What's all that like?
It's interesting because I'm still a student. I'm still a PhD candidate. And every now and then I'll apply for a form and it's like, you need, your supervisor to sign off on this, which is a bit infantilizing. I really don't like that. But yeah, it just kind of gave me the confidence. I didn't feel as bad about, being asked to peer review papers and stuff, because it just was that moment of, okay, I do know what I'm doing. And the response was really good from naming Ferrodraco. So yeah, but it was a bit of an overnight thing. It was a bit bizarre.
And on that note, that is where we end this podcast. Thank you so much, Adele Pentland. We did it. We made it. You can listen to Pals in Paleo. That'll be in the notes. You can read all the papers and all the things.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
It's time to spread some Paleo Jam.